Hi, I'm Brittany, and welcome to the Proverbs study. So, that last one was pretty tough, right? It was pretty tough to hear how much deception that is inherent in the people whose ways are evil and who lie. But it's a reality that we must face so that we can grow into the desire that God has for us. And so, we are studying the book of Proverbs, chapter 2. And in chapter 2, so far, we're learning the wisdom that God has in wisdom and in applying wisdom. We're learning why it's great for us to listen to wisdom. And so, chapter 2, we are at verse 16, 17, and 18. I'll be reading in the King James Version and the Passion Translation. But I want to preface this by saying that this passage starts with a complete thought beginning at verse 11, right? So I'm going to read verse 11 and then go to what we're reading today, which is 16, 17, and 18. So verse 11 says, "Discretion shall preserve thee." Proverbs 2:11 says, "Discretion shall preserve thee, understanding shall keep thee." And I'm going to jump to 16. "To deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the guide of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, and her paths unto the dead." In the Passion Translation, those 4 verses read, "If you choose to follow good counsel, divine design will watch over you, and understanding will protect you from making poor choices." Verse 16, "Only wisdom can save you from the flattery of the promiscuous woman. She's such a smooth-talking seductress. She left her husband and has forgotten her wedding vows. You'll find her house on the road to hell." This is hard to just say and recite because the Lord, He is all of our kinsman redeemer. If you're familiar with the story of Ruth, you will know that the kinsman redeemer is the person in the family in Jewish tradition that will take over for their family member who has passed away. They'll take over their land, and if their land or if their wife is left after they die, they will marry the woman that is left, the widow that is left. And one day, the Lord, I was feeling very lost and just alone out here on my own after college, and I was just in this multicultural church because I just needed to be around the worshipers of God that looked from all nations, just didn't look like me, because I was yearning for something authentic and that was familiar how I grew up in a multicultural school. And so I just felt so much comfort there, but I still felt alone. And there was a time when they just encouraged people to, if you had a prophetic word, if you had a word on your heart for someone, you don't have to know them, just go up to them and tell them. I'll never forget this. About, I would say she between 40 and 50 at the time. I was in my 20s, and she was a white woman, and she put her hand on my shoulder, And she said, I hear the Lord speaking over you that he is your kinsman redeemer and his covering is over you. And she said it in first person of the Lord. I am your kinsman redeemer and my covering is over you. And when she said that, I just broke. And so when I read this scripture, when it says, she left her husband and has forgotten her wedding vows, it's not the woman that has just left her physical husband. It's the woman who has left her first love, the person who formed her, who knitted her together in her mother's womb. She left the Lord. The Lord is all of our kinsman redeemer. He is our husbandman, as they said in ancient days. He is the one that paid the ransom for our lives. He's the one that secured the victory over death, hell, and the grave. And for us to leave him, for her to leave him, is the heartbreak of all heartbreaks for him. So, doing this Proverbs, understanding the Proverbs and understanding why certain things are the way that they are, why God says don't do this or don't do that. As you saw in the last video, lying is for a reason. God says not to lie for a reason, not to steal, right? Killing may be obvious, but don't steal. Don't commit adultery. All of these things are rooted in evil, and they may seem harmless initially. But if those things are done to you, you feel the impact. And those things are constantly being done to the Lord. They were done to Jesus when he was on this earth, and they're being done to God every day. He's constantly getting his people stolen from him by the devil. He's constantly being lied to. Oh God, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then we go and turn our back on him. He says he was counted as sheep for the slaughter. He was despised and rejected. He's the only God that made himself into human form and came down to spend time with us, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. He understood the nature of what this human flesh deals with in a way that no other God in any other religion understands. He came to relate to us. And so when we leave him, like this seductress, it hurts him because she left him. And then it keeps hurting him, though, with the actions that she does against his people. And we're all God's people. We were all made in his image. We are all formed in his likeness. He knitted us all together in our mother's womb before time began. He thought about each and every one of us individually. So we can't assume and be convinced and be lied to by the devil that he doesn't care. We can't be lied to because it's just not true, right? A lot of us feel disheartened and lost and forgotten about, abandoned. We feel refused. People just refuse to understand us, refuse to be around us. We feel rejected. We feel despised. Jesus felt all these things. And he's saying, stay away from the person that is going to lead you to hell. You'll find her house on the road to hell. Her house inclineth, that means it goes towards death. Her paths unto the dead. Her paths lead you to dead people, to dead things. Why? Because she actually died to her relationship with God. She decided she didn't want it, and she left her first love. So this wisdom is to deliver you, pull you away from the grasp of any stranger that flatters with words and that forsakes the guide of their youth and forgotten the covenant of her God, right? The covenant of their God. God makes a covenant with us. He does not want us out there all alone. He made a covenant with us. He's the only God that makes covenants with you and will tell you what the covenant is before you agree to it. But he's already made the decision in his heart about you before you even make a decision for him. And it's a covenant is an unbreakable promise. He's never going to change his mind. He's never going to put you down. He's never going to walk away. You're like a crying child to him. And when he sees you, he doesn't leave you crying. He longs to draw near to you, but he's not going to do it without your permission. A covenant is a legally binding contract that he made with himself about you. He's never going to turn his back on you. And so use this wisdom to deliver you. Use it. All the things that we discussed, everything, use it to deliver you from all of that. Because all of it leads to death. Remember, if you're following anybody that's even a little bit evil, run. A little bit darkness, run. Follow God instead, even if you have to walk alone, because you're not really alone. What did Elisha say? Open up the eyes of your servant so that he can see that more are they that are with us than they that are with them. And God opened the servant's eyes, and he was able to see a whole mountain full of angels in chariots of fire, ready to go and defend those two people, Elisha and his servant. So we should not ever feel like we're going to be alone, though we may be lonely. Jesus was lonely, but he's never left us. He's never left us, and he will never leave us. So I love you. I hope this was encouraging. Have a wonderful evening.